Not everything is lost. In wartime, close to a century ago, artist Hans Deutsch was commissioned by the Reverend Charles Rind Joy to create a symbol for the newly minted Unitarian Service Committee. During World War II, the USC assisted people in escaping Nazi terror, in part by issuing travel documents to those fleeing. Reverend Joy believed that these documents needed a seal, and Deutsch, a refugee artist, assisted in the creation of the symbol for this seal. The artist's image was of a fire emerging from a drinking vessel, a flaming chalice, and thus the symbol of our shared faith was born. This, my friends, is the origin story of our flaming chalice. Feel it at your core. Our faith knows what it means to keep a flame alive. In the words of Reverend Joy, the holy oil burning is a symbol of helpfulness and sacrifice. This is the root of what our flaming chalice that we kindle each week means. The ritual of lighting a chalice did not arise within our modern UU faith until some 40 years later or so, in the late 1900s, maybe around the 80s, after it was used as the cover of a brochure in 76, which also tells us something, that taking inspiration from history and remembering those who have done the work to keep the flame burning can trickle forward and inspire and ignite us today. So if this is the case, dear ones, I implore that we remember that what we do to keep our flame alive on this very day, in this very moment, in the sanctuary where you are gathered and in the sanctuaries of our hearts and homes, this today links us intrinsically to the future and to the people of the future as much as it does to our collective past. And so I ask of us, what can we do as individuals, as a community, to keep this flame alive in our hearts, even when it is hard, even when our hearts are dampened with defeat, even in times of despair? Poet Chilan Harkin writes, "It's when the earth shakes and foundations crumble that our light is called to rise up. It's when everything falls away and shakes us to the core and awakens all of our hidden ghosts that we dig deeper to find once inaccessible strength. It's in times when division is fierce that we must reach for each other and hold each other much, much tighter. Do not fall away now. This is the time to rise. Your light is being summoned. Your integrity is being tested, that it may stand more tall. When everything seemingly collapses, we must find within us that which is indomitable. Rise and find the strength in your heart. Rise and find the strength in each other. Burn through your devastation. Make it your fuel. Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark." We are not the only people across all eras of humanity who have struggled. We know this. Across time and place, the pursuit of peace, the lamp of freedom, has been hard won over and over again. And because of this, we can reach back in time and draw inspiration from others to understand how the greater human collective has kept the flame alive. As I said in some of our sharing circles this week, I've been thinking a lot about the women's suffrage movement, which took 100 years, by the way. And women won the right to vote about 100 years ago in 1920. And 100 years later, we are still fighting for that inherent worth and dignity for all to be valued, not only in the offices that govern our country, but all over, not even just nationally, but over the world. So when I planned the topic for this morning's sermon, I didn't know what we would need. I didn't know what would happen last week. But I noticed that the Hindu holiday of Diwali was right around the end of October, beginning of November, right there on the calendar. The Festival of Lights was close to our election. And I've never lived in India. I'm not Hindu, so the nuances of this holiday are not known to me, and therefore, humbly, I will not attempt to represent them. However, we can still draw strength from the spiritual message of this holiday. And so when I was studying the calendar, it caught my attention, and I realized that no matter what, we would benefit from this spiritual message to keep our flame burning, no matter what happened during the election. Yes? The message of Diwali strongly resonates with what I knew many of us would be feeling before or after heading to the polls this November. Let's think about it, right? Triumph of good over evil. Yeah, we want this. Victory of light over darkness. Okay. No matter who we are or who we vote for, actually, I believe that these values and aspirations are at the core of what many or even most people long for when they think of casting a vote for a political figure or for someone who they believe in. And so, on this post-election Sunday, I invite us to embrace the message of Diwali, which, as a UU, translates from me into symbolically keeping the flame of our chalice, the light of truth, the lamp of love, the heart fire of our shared values alive. Diwali is one of many seasonal holidays across cultures that kindles festival lights in the darkest time of the year. And seasonally, it seems to be natural for us to turn towards and yearn for the light during winter's darkest days or during our soul's spiritually darkest nights. And yet I admit it's confused me for a long time. This practice of holiday lights during the darkest time of the year, for a while, it just felt off. I mean, don't animals hibernate during this time? Shouldn't we be embracing the dark, the nourishing deep place where we can deepen into winter rest, the womb space? And truly, there is spiritual teaching in this too. Darkness can be a respite, and many of us may need some time in the dark this winter to cuddle with a book or some tea or curl in close with those who love us and yield into that embrace. And yet these winter holidays that hearken to light are not necessarily a plea to bring back the summer sun on the darkest days. And I realized this year that there is actually something about these holidays that does mirror our natural world. Hadn't thought of it before. And I think that's because as a modern person living in an industrial era, I have been largely disconnected from a routine relationship with my own night sky. I turn on electric lights. There's lights all around me in my neighborhood, and I'm so disconnected from the natural lights that are there, that are even more present during this time of year. This year, something clicked in me, and these light-filled holidays made sense in a new way because, in truth, During this time of year, the longer, darker nights do not merely wrap a blanket around the earth that puts out all light. Winter actually connects us to light, not the big, bright, dominating light of the sun, but to the stars. The glory of the parts of the world that are yet untouched by light pollution is incredible. Maybe some of you have been to some of these places, spent a night under the stars in a dark sky zone, maybe in Moab, Utah, or on a backwoods trail. It's an incredible display where billions of stars adorn the sky. When I was in college in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, my friends and I used to take trips over to the West Virginia mountains for night sky viewing, and I'll never forget our trip to view the Leonid meteor shower in November of 2001. Oh my gosh, laying on blankets with a panoramic view of what seemed like a million shooting stars. And in truth, there were thousands of shooting stars, thousands of meteors that night. And at first, we exclaimed in bursts of joy, wow, wow, another one. Oh my God, this is amazing. And they were overlapping, the meteors were overlapping with bright, glowing tails, and they lit up the sky over and over. Actually, one viewer counted close to 1,000 just within an hour. And the visual display was with us until dawn, with streaks of light streaming as the sun began to rise. And after a while, we just lay there in silent awe. And to be honest, I'm ashamed to admit that the repetition of this brilliant display actually became a little predictable, almost, but not quite boring. And that's what voting has become like for me over the years, I have to admit. The first time, wow, I did that. I voted. Woo! I have a vote. And as the years continued, it became a predictable duty. And let me tell you, I was not the only star in the sky of voters when I stood in line to vote this year in Stafford, Virginia, where I live. It took me 2 hours to get through the line. There were hundreds of other human beings there, or shooting stars, if you will, meteors like me, streaking their lights and voting their truths. I was one of many. And it was almost boring standing in that line, but not quite. It was a bit mundane on the surface, but it was also something else. It was uniquely special in a way that I don't often experience, in a way that brings tears to my eyes, because we all were not the same there standing in line. We weren't in our echo chambers. We were there together, voting with different priorities for different people. And it was many things. But I might even say that it was beautiful. So, as is typical, there were people and signs at my voting site promoting both major parties, and there were people from both parties cheering us on, keeping us steadfast in line. I was offered a bottle of water by a volunteer from one party, and she cheered us on. She kept motivating us to keep up our endurance for the 2 hour line. And later, I was actually offered a hand warmer from a volunteer from the other party, and I accepted. I actually really didn't need or want the hand warmer, but I did feel like I needed to be part of that community in a way that I didn't fully realize until I showed up for this impromptu party. We were all so different standing in that line. Young, old, temporarily able-bodied, infirm, sitting, standing, riding in strollers. Someone was nursing a baby, reading books, scrolling social media, singing songs. People were wearing all sorts of things. Some were adorned in traditional Indian attire, others in casual workout gear, bedroom slippers, high heels. We were the spectrum of the diversity of America. And I thought about what it must be like to run for candidate, for the office of the President of the United States, and to be responsible for all of us, to yearn to represent us as a people, to try to help us, to have the responsibility of knowing how to help all of us, support all of us and all of our difference and our different views, our different beliefs, our different cultures and traditions, our diverging hopes and fears. Every single person in that voting line had a story. Every life is a story. In today's pop culture, in the music and arts world, in all of our media, we have a tendency to elevate a select few, to tell their stories. And we call them masters. And believe me, I love the masters. I love Taylor Swift and Beyonce and the Beatles as much as the next person. I do. But I feel a notable loss when I'm only immersed in the music and artwork and stories of the elite class of people that society has promoted to the top, people who I've never met, who I'll never meet. And this is actually what I love, one of the things I love most about ministry, because everyone, every person in this room, every person that we meet in the grocery store, every stranger on the street, we all have such incredible stories. And I believe we were made to share them with one another, not just on the radio, but in rooms like this one, which is part of why being gathered together today is so vitally important. And I hope so nourishing to be a part of for you. I think this is part of what faith communities are for, especially ones like this, places where we can show up and hear words of poetry or musings from a minister or from speakers, but also hear from each other. This room today, it doesn't have a huge sun of a pop culture icon filling the room with light, like Taylor on her Eras tour. This is a room filled with stars. Each one of us is an epic story. Each one of us is a lamp of truth. Each one a light of hope in the darkness. Each one a story and a spirit and a light worth protecting. And I believe in us, friends. I believe in our ability to protect these flames. I believe in our ability to be in community together and to support one another, like in the story that Kathy read us this morning. I believe that together our diversity makes the tapestry of life more beautiful, and I believe that we all shine out into the darkness, making a collective constellation of divinity. I believe in our UU heritage that teaches us to protect each other's divinity, to keep the flame of hope alive, of persistence, of truth, and loving protection ever burning. After such an intense week, an intense election week, even with the unknown future for our country and for all of us, and I know it would be unknown no matter the result of the election, I'm anchoring into a center of peace and strength inside myself. And that might not be what you're feeling this morning. And that's okay. I'm actually going to call that good. We don't all need to think alike, to love alike. We don't need to feel alike, to persevere together. We need all of us and our complexity. The grievers and the mourners, the believers and the questioners, those filled with hope or fear, we need all of us on this journey. And most importantly, we need to stay tethered to our love for ourselves and each other. Because no matter what, whether the president-elect is in alignment with our values or the values of our faith community, we must keep shining, keep burning. And I'm confident that we will. I know that we will because this is what we do. This is who we are. It's not from conscious effort. It's because that's what we were made to do. In the words of UU singer-songwriter Daryl Loacano, we are a people of love, a people of hope, and a people of change. And perhaps every group of people across time and culture has seen themselves this way. And whether there's an incredible holiday like the Indian holiday of Diwali to remind us of the triumph of good over evil, of light over darkness, or whether we make meaning in a different way, we will keep making meaning, we will keep making beauty. And together, because each person, each spirit is a holy light, we will continue to shine. I invite you to join me now just for a moment of silent contemplation. Closing your eyes if you'd like, placing a hand on your body and taking a breath. And feeling that light, that divine spark that resides within you. Feeling it burn. And I invite you, if it feels right, to make a promise to yourself to protect this flame. And when you're ready to look around the room at the flames, at the stars of your companions, look around the Zoom room or the room where you are in the sanctuary. And please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 118 in the gray hymnal, This Little Light of Mine.